Hey guys, welcome back. Today we got a pretty exciting video because we're unboxing a new 3D printer. And that's pretty exciting because this 3D printer is large. If you can see how big that is. So this is going to be the largest printing size printer I have. So in this video we're going to unbox it, put it together, and do our first prints. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. Let's get started. Alright, so this is the box that it comes in, and it's quite large. There's no really good way to show you, but you can see my hand on it, and you know, it looks pretty small. But in any case, this is a very large box, or quite large. And the printer that's inside of it is called a TRONXY XY-3. So the XY-3 is the larger model. There's actually an XY-2, but this is their larger printer that has a volume of over 300 millimeters. So let's go ahead and open the box here. All right, let's see what we have inside. So as you can see, it is very nicely packed in foam here. Looks like we have some kind of basic instruction manual here in the parts list. So it appears that this printer is very easy to assemble. So that should be a pretty huge plus there. All right, and the first thing that pops to my eye here is this huge bed. And it is the mat, the magnetic mat of the printer. And this thing is quite big. And it looks like there is two parts to it. So the bottom part and then the top part here. And there is a sticker here that says not to exceed 70 degrees on the bed or it will damage the magnetic properties of the mat. Alright, so let's take off some of these little covers here. So I definitely like how everything is nicely packed and laid out here. So I'm just going to start pulling parts out of the top here, and we'll kind of go over quickly what's in here. So they include a really nice little spool of filament. So it looks to be 250 grams of white PLA filament. So here we have the AC adapter, and unfortunately it's the wrong one. I'm not sure why they still have issues of sending the right AC adapter, but thankfully I have plenty of them, so it's not a big deal. So it also comes with a spatula. So it looks to be like an accessory bag with some tools, zip ties, cable, and some other things in there, extra parts. Very cool. So over here it looks like we have more pieces. So this looks like the brace for the frame. And then we have another one here, but this one has the switch. So that looks like the Z switch. And we also have a micro SD card with a USB adapter, and that is an 8 gig card there. So, and here we have, looks like to be an extra hot end there. I guess if you needed to, you can replace. That's definitely pretty cool that they include that. And so this looks like to be the spool holder. So it's just a piece of metal. Definitely a little different take on a spool holder. I like it, how minimalistic it looks. So here it looks like we have the power supply, and it's a quite large one. So here's the specs. It's a 24 volt 15 amp. And here's the printer sticker here on the side of the power supply where you can see all the information about the printer. And there's our printing size right there, 310 by 310 by 330, which is quite large. So, and it looks like we have protection here over this little acrylic parts here around. And I definitely love how they included all this around the supply here. And then out the back we have the connector that connects to the main board. Alright, and over here it looks like we have the screen slash motherboard slash, I guess, the brains to everything. And this is what it looks like. So it's like a all-in-one unit that has the touchscreen here up front. And we have a bunch of wires that are coming out of it, and this is all going to go to the printer. Very interesting design and how they chose to do it this way, which is interesting. So on the back of it here we have a fan and some little holes, I guess, for cooling. And there's cooling slots on the side of the display assembly here. And on the top of it is where you're going to connect your USB, and this is where your micro SD card goes. Very interesting. So definitely a very unique way to incorporate all the electronics in one unit here. All right, so that looks like everything for the top part here. So let's take off this foam. And here we can see the assembled pieces, and it looks like there's not much assembly needed, which is kind of cool. All right, so let's take this part out first. And below that, we have the bottom assembly, which is nicely tucked away, all these foam. So they definitely made the box a little bit bigger, where you can see all this buffer around the printer, giving it really good protection. So let's go ahead and pull this guy out here. And that looks like everything for the box. All right, so now that we got the box out of the way, let's start here with the bottom section here. And the thing that's standing out to me right away, guys, is the low profile. Look how low this thing is to the ground. It's ultra low, like where the bed is to the table. I'm really liking that. So here we have our Y stepper motor, and there is a switch right here. So the frame is quite thin, and I'm not sure exactly what this is. I guess this is a 2040 extrusion aluminum here. So we have a 2040 here in the middle, and then on the other end, on the front and back, we have a 2020 aluminum frame there. So it does seem a little thin, but they are going for this low profile, which is nice. But I don't think that's an issue at all, because if you look at how it's built, it's like a box, and then this mounts to the ends. This is a much stronger design than mounting the center rail here where the bed rides right in the middle. You know, that's actually more vulnerable to moving than something like this. So let's go ahead and look underneath here. So obviously we have a heated bed, and not only that, guys, you can see here that we have insulation. That's very nice, because that's going to help us getting this pretty large bed up to temperature a lot quicker. And here on the bed, you can see there are 6 rollers. So we have 3 stationaries, and we have 3 eccentric nut adjustable ones. And the cable here, you can see that it's soldered straight to the bed, and it's actually zip tied to the frame here, so it should be quite strong. So before you start assembling anything, the first thing you want to do is you want to put this bottom frame here on a flat surface, and make sure your surface is flat. And what you want to do is you want to loosen all these bolts all around, and make sure your printer on the bottom is sitting very flat, because you know everything is going to work off of this up. And in order to do that, we're going to need some tools. So let's go ahead and open this bag up here and see what they have in here. So it looks like we got a pretty nice Phillips screwdriver, and also a little flathead screwdriver. We have some zip ties to organize. We have the USB cable to connect to the printer from your computer. So it looks like we have some hardware, some bolts, and a coupler looks like there. And I think this is all the bolts you'll need to assemble the whole thing. So as you can see, it's going to be quite simple. And then for the last part, we have a wrench and some Allen wrenches. So I went ahead and took this thing to another table that was level. So mine was quite level, so all I had to do is tighten everything, and actually everything was quite tight already. So, but you want to go ahead and check that anyways. Even if everything looks fine and level, you want to make sure that all the bolts are tight. So the next thing I like to do is I like to adjust the eccentric nuts on the bed. And the reason for that is because we can flip this thing around real easy like this, and we can actually move the whole frame, and we can get a really good feeling of what it should be like, you know, before we put it all together. And then it'll be extremely hard to get to it, especially it being a low profile like this. So you definitely want to adjust your eccentric nuts now. So if you have any trouble at all with loosening and tightening all this stuff, it might be worth it to go ahead and take the bed off here. And the reason you might have to do that is because there's no way to get into the Allen wrench part of the bolt on the top here without taking that out. So I'm going to go ahead and take mine out, because I want to do it right, because I don't want to come back to this later. So I'm just going to go ahead and unscrew these 4 knobs from the bed, and we'll just pull the bed right off. Alright, so this should just pop right off. So I'm going to cut this loose for now, because I have plenty of little zip ties. I can put it right back on, and then we'll move our bed out of the way for now. So the way I like to do it is I loosen the bolt just a bit first. You don't want to make it too loose, because you kind of want to still have a little bit of friction there. And then when I get that a little loose, then we'll just start off with our first eccentric nut here. And so what we want to do is we want to just barely grab it. Same thing for this one, just barely grab it. And the third one, just barely grab it. So once you do that, I like to tighten this nut up just a little bit after that. And the reason I want to do that is because I want it to be even more stiff. So just a slight tighten. And so now we should be pretty set in there, but we're not completely tight yet. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and check it. So it should be very smooth, and we should not be having any wheels skipping or jumping. And obviously we should have no play at all either. So if you roll it around like this and you see a wheel like spinning and then not spinning, then that one needs to be tightened just a fuzz. And when I mean a fuzz, I mean just a fuzz. So I tightened this one up just a little more. This one seems fine overall. So I'm going to give this one just a little bit of a tighter. I mean just a tiny amount. And there it goes. Now none of them are jumping. So they're all contacting. And this is how I know that I'm not too tight, and I'm definitely not too loose, obviously, because we're solid as a rock here. And the reason that's important that it's not too tight is if you're too tight, these little plastic wheels, they'll shred really quick. So right now it's feeling extremely good. So I think I'm really happy with where it's at. And I'm going to leave it right there. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten all these nuts nice and snug. And that's it, guys. We should be done here. Just also make sure these are also pretty snug, so nothing is loose. And we are done with the eccentric nuts on the bed. Alright, so we're pretty much done here. I'm going to put the bed back on and we'll continue with our assembly. Alright, so for the next part, let's go ahead and look at our instructions here. And it looks like we only have 4 steps total, and then the last step here to connect everything. So step 1 tells us to put the upper portion down into the frame and put the bolts in it, and then also put the braces on the side. So I'm going to get my 4 bolts ready here, and they're the black ones. And so now all we got to do is just set this thing over it and somehow start the bolt. Or I guess just picking it up might do the trick. See if we can start the bolts. There we go. Oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought. It's pretty cool how this printer has everything already pre-built. So this is like the main assembly here. Now we got to do this side. So now we can go ahead and tighten everything. So we can go ahead and tighten the 4 bolts because that's pretty much the extent of all the assembly. So, and since everything is pre-built, we don't have to really adjust anything. Alright, so once you snug those 4 bolts up really good, you should have a pretty solid frame. So next we're going to put in the T-braces. So they have all these little T-nuts in the back, and the interesting part is the screws are actually, or the bolts are Phillips. So that's kind of an interesting choice. I'd much prefer to be Allen wrench, but because I'm sure you can get a better tightness on that, but it should be alright. Maybe there's a reason why they're Phillips. And this is why we have the provided little Phillips screwdriver. So the way the T-nuts work is you loosen it and then you tighten them. And the T-nut should turn inside where it needs to be. I had a hard time with these at first when I first started messing with them, but now that I understand how they work, they're actually pretty nice. So if everything looks good, we can go ahead and tighten this up really good. So try to tighten these as hard as you can. It is a little hard because it's Phillips. And that's it, and we're done with this side. So let's flip the printer around. Alright, so that brings us to this side, and this side we have the Z switch. Pretty much we're going to do the same thing as set it in there first. So I'm going to tighten the bottoms up just a little bit, just so it kind of holds everything. And now we're just going to lower this thing down until we're pretty close, the nozzle is, to the bed. So I would say probably about a 1/4 inch or so, you know, depending on how much your springs are compressed here on the build plate. So mine are compressed about halfway. So if you want to leave a little more just in case, but you could always adjust it obviously. But once I get it where I want it about, then I'll just go all the way up where this clicks, because I know that would be very close to where it needs to be, and go ahead and tighten it here. So I definitely don't like that these bolts here have to go through this little acrylic part in order to tighten it. So that's kind of not going to give us as a rigid connection here, because we do need this brace here to support. But in any case, we should be all right here. So make these, you know, snug as possible, because you're not able to put that much force anyway with the Phillips screwdriver. So I got it pretty tight, and that should be good right there. Alright, so step 1 is done. Let's go to step 2, and that is putting the main control module screen thingamajigger on the frame. But before we install it, I'm going to go ahead and take the back cover off here so we can see what kind of board it has and how it's put together inside there, which is kind of a unique little package here. So we got 4 Phillips bolts to unscrew. So now our cover should just come off, and there it goes. So the fan is connected to it, and you can see, I guess that's where it blows into the board here and cools everything off. So let's see if I can get a little closer. So we have some kind of capacitor here of some sort. So our stepper drivers are under all these wires here, and you can see they're heat sinked. And it looks like we got a couple more heat sinks over here. I'm not sure. I think that's maybe for the bed. And here on the processor, it does say ARM on it, ST. So yeah, it looks like a pretty interesting compact little package here. Now the only issue I see that if we wanted to install, let's say, TL smoothers, you would have to probably do it externally, because there's not much room in here for those, which wouldn't be too big of a deal. I think they might fit right here on each side, because technically we only need 2 of them. So that's what the board looks like. I myself don't understand too much of what I'm looking at, but that is the board. And here on the top, on the edge, we can see there that it says TRONXY. So it is their board. Alright, so I'm gonna screw the cover back on and we'll proceed to installing it. Alright, so the control module here installs on these 2 little T-nuts, and they just go in the frame here, and then you tighten them up. I guess something like this. So this is made to go on the left side only here. So if you're left-handed, you'll probably love this. And all your wires just kind of go that way. There might be a little bit of a wire management issue here that we'll have to take care of, but we'll just have to see. We'll just kind of spread them back. So then we're gonna tighten this thing right here. So same way, just like with everything else, we're gonna loosen them and then tighten them, and they should lock in there nicely. So I'm gonna go ahead and peel this little sticker here so it looks a little nicer. And there's actually another little plastic cover over the TRONXY, and I think it pulling on it too hard and I ripped some of it off. Gotta be really careful or the letters will come off. So it looks like the Y was underneath or on top of this other piece of film. We kind of lost our Y here a little bit. So yeah, that's a pretty nice looking little display here on the side. Alright, so that was step 2. Now we're going to step 3, which is the power supply. So here's our power supply, and it's actually quite large. And also, since they haven't peeled this acrylic tape here on top, we're gonna have to do that. And unfortunately, it's under all these things, so that might give us trouble. Well, let's see what that turns out to be like. Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. So it's coming off pretty cleanly off the bolts here, but not the plug here. So it might be worth, unscrewing this and, getting it off right so it looks cleaner. So I'm going to go ahead and peel all that off and we'll continue to install this. All right, so I finally got all these stickers off of it, and it was a little bit annoying, to be honest. I wish they would have just took it off in the factory, but it's not that big of a deal. All right, so this should be installing somewhere back here, and these are the 2 bolts that hold the power supply. So it goes here on the right side, and there's 2 holes that are drilled through. You should be able to put your bolt in, and just like that. Looks like we're going to need to move our Z-axis up a little bit. Alright, so I got the bolts started. Now all I got to do is tighten them up, and that's it. Now our power supply is in its place. So we got a quite easy installation so far. So we got our screen on, we got the power supply, we got the base connected to the top part here. And so that takes us to step 4, which is almost the last step, I guess. And it's the spool holder. So this is the spool holder that comes with the printer. And I definitely like it that it kind of leans that way because, it brings the spool even farther down to the edge. Alright, so here on the left side of the printer, the same side where the lead screw is here, the spool holder goes right over here next to it. And we got the same kind of T-nuts here that we were working with. It's just going to go on the side of the channel, and then I'm going to push it all the way to this edge here as much as I can, and then we're going to tighten it right there. And that's basically how it goes. So I'm not a huge fan of this kind of spool holder because the turn here is kind of too sharp. So I think eventually I will be using an external spool holder, but this is how you install the one that comes with it. So here's a little better look of what it looks like when it's on. Alright, so we're done with all the steps, and here in the back we have the last step, which is connecting all the wires. And the cool part is here is they remind you that on the power supply you need to switch it to your voltage, which we need to go ahead and do that. And then we're just going to connect all the wiring, and it's kind of cool here because they have everything pictured here and shows you what it does and what it is for. So quite simple instructions, but pretty straightforward and easy to understand. So here on the back of the power supply, we can see that there's a switch back here. And so it actually has an engravement here on the actual body that says 110 is down and 220 is up. Right now it's on 220, so we need to push it down. And now we're on 110. So make sure you don't forget this step so you don't mess up the printer. Alright, and since we're back here, let's go ahead and get this power cable here. So there's definitely a little bit of work involved in cable management here because everything is kind of just laying around. So you'll definitely have to use a few zip ties here and there and things like that. And since this bed is such a low profile, you got to make sure, your little knobs there are not going to snag on any of the wires. So we might have to, zip tie it in a few places here. But let's go ahead and try to connect all this, and then we'll kind of work with the wire management as we go. So as you can see, there's quite a few wires everywhere, and there's actually another little sack of wires right here, or I guess it's just one plug mostly. Yeah, it is just one plug. Okay, so there's not much to do here. It's just one plug going down. Alright, so a lot of this stuff is straightforward. So this plug here matches with this plug over here, so we can go ahead and connect that. So that's easy enough. So here we have two power plugs. One is for the bed and one is for the main power supply into the unit here. And you can't really mix them up because they're both different. One is a male and a female on the other opposite side. So, but they have labels on here so you can read it. So this one says power just to make sure, and this one says power also. And so this is for the heated bed. And then we got a little tiny wire here, and this is for the, looks like the thermostat for the bed also. So we're definitely going to have quite a few wires right here beside the printer. So let's start with the shorter ones. So here we have the Z motor plug, and then we have the Z end stop switch. So the ones with the motor are the larger ones, and the end stops are the smaller ones. So we're going to plug the motor in. The Z end stop is right here. All right, so here we have a little bit more wires. So we have the X-axis motor and the E extruder motor. So the E goes here for the motor, and the X-axis motor is right here, which will clip in right there. Simple enough. So the X-axis end stop switch was already connected here, so we didn't have to connect that. So here we have two more wires left, and this is for the Y, for the motor, and then the switch. And that's way back over here. So the motor plug is underneath, and then the end stop wire goes over here. So we're also going to try to get that from the bottom, and just like that, that is on also. And believe it or not, guys, that is all our wires. And you can see that, you know, it looks quite messy over here. But we do have one more wire left, and this says f-stop on it. And what that stands for is filament guide detection. So this printer actually has a filament detector, and this is the plug for it. So let's go ahead and plug that in, and that's it. And now we're officially done with all our wiring, but we're only done plugging it in. And you know, obviously we're gonna have to spend a little bit of time organizing all these spaghettis here. All right, guys, so about 20 minutes and a bunch of duct tape, and I got this thing organized pretty well here. So now I can move the printer around, and all the wires are together, as you can see, and this goes all the way up and everything reaches fine. There's not really a great way to do this, but seems like using the electrical tape worked out pretty well. So as you can see, it's all together, and now we can move the printer around without, you know, worried about all those wires all over the place. So overall, I think that worked out great, and I guess we can install the magnetic bed here since we're done with the assembly. So this looks like a big sticker that should just peel, but before we do that, there is a film over this aluminum here that we need to peel off. So once you get started, it comes off pretty easy. So now we're going to peel off the magnetic bed part here on the bottom. So as you can see here, there's a little, like a little notch tab here, and that's obviously going to go to the front. So once you get it started, it should peel off pretty easy. All right, so now we have a very sticky magnet mat here that we need to glue onto here. So you only get one shot at this, so make sure you get it nice and centered, because it definitely will be hard to take it off if you don't get it right the first time. All right, I'm hoping I got it pretty straight. I'm going to go ahead and land it. So far, so good, looks like. So for once, I actually did that very nicely. So I'm just going to take a rag and I'm going to kind of push on it a little bit. It looks like we have a little air bubble here. So you definitely don't want air bubbles. You can see little bubbles right here. So this is not good. So probably what I should have done is I was going down. I should have been, you know, following it behind. I'm not sure how I'm going to get these out now. I think you probably push them out. Yeah, it looks like I can push them out. Okay, so that's good. So if you do have bubbles though and you can't get rid of them, you know, take something sharp and poke a little hole in it. That'll release the air. And you definitely don't want any bubbles, because if you have bubbles anywhere, you know, that's going to be uneven and you're going to mess up your printing bed. All right, so once you got your bubbles out and you're happy with your sticker there, then we can go ahead and apply this magnetic bed right on top of it, just like that, and we're done. All right, so now that we got it all together, let's look at the details a little bit closer here of this printer. So we'll start here on the top, and we can see our spool holder. It's actually quite attractive the way it looks, so that's pretty nice. And right behind the spool holder here, we can see that there is a guide here for the Z screw, and the cool part is that it's actually adjustable. So you got two little bolts there that you can loosen, and you can move this thing back and forth. Very interesting. So as we come down here, we can see our extruder assembly. And here's an interesting part. The clamp part over here is actually metal, which is really nice. Normally, a lot of the times they're plastic. So right beside that, we have the filament detection slash guide, I guess. I'm not sure exactly what kind this is, but we'll know once we stick something in there, and we'll either hear it click or not click. So we do have just one rod for the whole printer. which is technically fine. And since the power supply sits here, there's no room for another rod anyways. And so if we keep going down, we can see our Z-axis motor here and a coupler here. So if you notice, guys, they use a lot of darkened parts where it makes the printer look more discreet. So here we have the Y switch and the motor. Here you can see, guys, the darkened pulley here also. Very cool that they decided to do that. Alright, and our belt seems to be tight also here, so that's good. So here we can see that we also have darkened pulleys. So as you can see, this printer has a blacked out kind of look, so they try to keep everything as dark as possible, including these bolts here. So here's our power supply. This is where it sits. Hopefully it's not going to be too loud, but it does have quite a large fan here. And definitely nice that they included this little enclosure here, which really finishes it up nicely. So here's our hot end setup, and it's quite a familiar looking one. So we have a nice little fan up front, an axial fan here on the side. And then the interesting part is this fan duct here. It's actually blowing down. It's got the cutout on the bottom only. If you can see that, it's just blowing down, which is quite interesting actually. And since they included an extra hot end assembly here, we can kind of see what it looks like. So it looks like a typical, I don't know what they're called, MK8 I guess, style hot end here. And so here we have the bed, and it is 310 by 310 by 330 high. So it's quite a very nice printing area. It's definitely the largest one I have. I'm not sure exactly what I would print on such a large bed, but I definitely got a few ideas. But it's quite nice to have this kind of size if you did need it. So I put the sticker on here, and if I would have known, I would have offsetted it just a little bit. But if you can see here on the edge, the magnetic properties don't sit flush with the sticker. They're actually offset to this side, to the left here a little bit. So over here we got a little overhang, and then on this side we're kind of, more that way. It's not that big of a deal, but I guess if I paid attention a little bit more, I wouldn't have this offset here. But in any case, it's not that big of a deal. As you can see, overall it's just fine, and it should be a breeze to get our prints off once we're done. Now, one thing I wish they would have done is they put this magnetic part at the factory, because they would be able to do a better job in a controlled environment, and plus they'd be able to put it in the right position each time. So because it's such a big sticker, it's a little bit tedious to get it on right. And putting this thing on is not super hard, but it is a little bit resistive. I think it's definitely worth the extra tediousness of putting it back on for the ability to, take off the big prints with breeze. And so here we have the screen. So this sits pretty nice to the left side of the printer, and it's quite attractive. And after we did our wire management here, it definitely looks a lot better. Definitely spend a few minutes and collect all those wires together like that, and I think it would be a much better experience, especially when you got to move the printer. It's not going to be a whole issue with wires everywhere. Alright, so now that the printer is assembled, we can go ahead and plug it in and see if it powers on, and then we'll quickly look at the UI and home it and make sure everything works. Alright, so I had to borrow a cable here, no big deal. So let's click the power button. Okay, thus seeing. Alright, well look at that clean UI. Wow, that's very nice. So the printer is on, guys, and the first thing I'm noticing is how quiet it is. The power supply fan is actually on, and it's blowing quite good, and it's actually quiet. Wow, that's impressive. That's a good sign already. I definitely like that. So this fan is not moving right now, nor this one, so hopefully this turns on when it starts to go. I guess maybe it's programmed for that. It's very quiet just sitting here though. Alright, so let's take a look at some of these things that they got in here. So they have system, tools, and print. If we click system, so we have information, looks like. We have about. We have the language choices. Okay, so there's only two languages, I guess, Chinese and English. And then we have the default button. Here we have some kind of adjustments. Okay, I don't know why I went there. So that's all for the system. So let's go to tools. And here's all of our stuff for the printer. So we have the movement controls here. Wow, I really love the layout. It's great. So here you can choose how much you want to move and where you want to move it. Very cool. Preheat the bed or the nozzle. So here we can extrude filament. Here we can level the bed, and it looks like it has 5 points. So I'll be using this in a second. Here we have, looks like, the fan control. So here we have a stop button. I guess that's to stop the process. And then we have the Z off access. Please enable level compensation first. Okay. Alright, so that looks pretty basic. That's everything. So here we have a print button, and that'll read the files, which there's none right now. Very easy and intuitive. I definitely like the UI. So let's go ahead and home this thing, make sure everything works. So I'm going to click on home, and there we go, we're moving. It does beep whenever it hits the end stop. Alright, so now it's coming down quite quick actually. And there we go. And we are home, guys. And look at that nozzle from the bed. Perfection. So all we gotta do is go up just a little bit and we should be pretty level. So it looks like we had that right on the money. Alright, so now that we know all of our axes work, let's go ahead and try to level the bed. So we'll go to level here. We'll click on our first corner. There we go. So I'm just gonna use a Post-it note here and we'll level it from here. So just gotta go up just a little bit. Alright, then we'll go to our next one. Alright, so I think I got the bed pretty well there. Let's go ahead and preheat this thing, make sure our temperatures work there. So they don't, looks like, have a hot button for, let's say, PLA preheat or whatever. I guess you do have to. I don't know, I wonder if there's a shortcut for that. Oh, okay, so it kind of, when you first push it, it jumps to the thing. Okay, I didn't notice that. So I overjumped the bed like crazy. Okay, that's cool. So you just push a couple times or less and you got what you need. So they really simplified this UI where it's not cluttered. Now, whenever I did start preheating, this fan kicked a little bit harder here on the supply. So it does have a variable fan here. So it is a little bit louder. I don't know if you guys can hear it or not, but it's not bad still. Quite quiet overall. Alright, so we're going to let that preheat. And while it's doing that, let's go ahead and put some filament in. So since I have a bunch of filament, I'm just going to use what I have here. So let's see how the spool holder will hold it. It actually looks quite nice. So here we're going to go into the detector. Okay, so it is a mechanical switch. I can hear it. And there's a little blue light right there. It comes on and off when you go in. Very cool. And you can see, guys, the sharp curve that it has to make. And this is the part that I'm not crazy about. Now, maybe it's not a big deal. I don't know. I haven't used a printer like this. I usually just relocate the spool down here where it feeds more directly. Since a lot of your printing is down low, that seems to be, the more favorable spot. And plus, I feel like, especially this being plastic, it might eat it up eventually too. So I don't know. I guess that's something to consider for sure. So I went ahead and pushed the filament through all the way, and some of it did seep out, as you can see here. And here's the impressive part, guys. The bed is already 60 degrees, and that did not take long. I mean, that was maybe a couple minutes. So that's quite impressive performance, and I think that has something to do with that insulation on the bottom there. Well, that's really cool. I was not expecting a huge bed like this to heat up that fast. Alright, so let's grab our SD card that came with the printer. And you can see there it's an 8 gigabyte. And let's insert it into here. Here's something kind of funny, is they put the sticker on the wrong way. The USB's on this side and the SD card's on that side. Kind of funny, but no big deal. Alright, so let's see what's on that SD card. So we're going to go back. And by the way, the touchscreen works extremely well. It's very responsive. Okay, so there's a folder in there. So there is a G-code. So there's a 40mm box. Alright, so I guess let's go ahead and do this little box and see what happens. So when we clicked on it, we do have a display here, but it's not really showing what it is. So we do have a few options here. We have, I guess, to start it, and then I guess that's to delete it maybe, or maybe cancel. I don't think that's cancel because you can just go back. That might actually delete the file. So let's go ahead and print, or start here, I guess. And there it goes, it started. So here's all our information. And then we do have some options we'll check out here in a second. So let's see how this thing does. It moves quite fast on the Z-axis. Oh wow, that moved really fast. So it started the print. It's probably doing a brim or a skirt. Well, it looks like I nailed the bed leveling pretty close. It might be a little tight. That's okay. We have that magnetic mat to work with, so it should be no issues getting it off. So this is a quite small print for this large bed. We definitely have a lot more real estate to work with. It's kind of curious to see how it's going to do on the details here. So let's go ahead and check out the display and see what it has to offer. I'm just going to let this thing keep printing. So here on the display we can pause the print, stop the print, or here we have some tools. Let's check that out. Okay, so here we have the speed, the temperature of the bed, and then the nozzle temperature, flow rate, I guess that's what that is, and then we got the fans. So let's say if we wanted to adjust the speed here, can we click on it? Okay, here we go. So if you click on it, you can choose the speed. Well, let's just say 90%. Oh, 90% instead of 100. And there we go. Now we're printing at 90. and I can definitely tell that it changed tone over there. So I love the layout, guys. The layout is just amazing on this thing. It's a very nice, attractive looking printer. Now, one of the things that makes me think that would have made this a little better is because they have this black theme going on. They should have made this UI background like a darkened style, and I think that would have made it a lot more nicer looking at. But yeah, this thing is working and everything's fine. And so far, guys, I'm pretty impressed with this. I like everything that this thing offers, and I still can't get over how nice the profile is. It's so low. I mean, you can see how low that is. But obviously the most important part here is our print quality, and we're going to see what that looks like. So one thing I didn't mention that I didn't really notice because it was so quiet were the fans. So this fan is on and this fan is on, and it's absolutely just almost silent. So I don't know what kind of fans they used in there, but they're great. Like, I can't even hear them. And if I stop it, it's like there's no difference. It's that quiet. It's pretty amazing. So it's 28% done. It's been 33 minutes, so I guess this is going to take over an hour, I guess, and a half or something. But it's literally printing a box of some sort with infill. So it's quite an intensive print, I guess. So another thing to note that's kind of nice is that the fan back here is on right now, and it's actually blowing out. So it's not pushing the air in, but it's, you know, pulling the air out. And it's also a very quiet fan. So I'm not sure what kind of fans they're using, but it does say TRONXY on them. But they're very nice fans, and they seem to be very quiet. Oh, so there we go. We're done. And this thing actually ended up being some kind of square / circle on top. So here we have printer done, I guess, what it says. So looking at it from the first look here, it looks amazingly well, actually. I don't know if you guys can tell very well, but look at those lines. Let's see how easy it is to pop it off, even though our bed is still kind of hot. I might need 2 hands for that. Stuck on there very well. So another plus about having a magnetic bed is that you don't have to put stress on the bed and the bearings there to take your models off, because you can just peel them off like this. And so when you set your bed level once, it should be fine forever technically. So it's stuck to the mat quite well, and it's still hot, so maybe that's one of the reasons. Okay, so it's coming off but the first layer, so I might have had it a little bit too close to the bed there, because it's sticking on very well actually, but the model's coming off quite well. So the surface on this bed here is very sticky, and you can kind of see maybe on the reflection there, the letters there from the bed actually imprinted into the model on the bottom, which is kind of crazy. But if we look at the print itself, it actually turned out very good. There is slight little layering, but it's practically not there. It's quite good. Actually pretty impressive for the first print here. And the way the layers go down on this printer, it seems excellent. Alright, well, I'm really happy with this first print here, but I want to go ahead and print a couple other things. I think I'm going to go ahead and print a benchy, maybe in the same white here, so we can kind of have something to work off of. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and maybe print a couple other things, and we'll see. Alright, so I went ahead and printed the benchy and a few other things, as you can see here. And I just want to say that I'm having a really good time using this thing and printing on it, because it's just an enjoyable machine to use. Alright, so let's go ahead and look at our little benchy here that we did. So the benchy is not perfect. It does have a few layer shifts here. Now I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but I think maybe my Z-axis is binding somewhere or something. So I need to look into that. I didn't do any adjustments yet of any sort. So this is what I got right out of the box assembled. And on top of that, I haven't adjusted the wheels here at all, because they seem to be fine. So maybe with a little bit of adjustment and looking at the Z-rod axes there, might fix all these issues here that we're having. But they're not terrible, but they're definitely there. There's a couple of them right here and a couple down here. But overall, you can see that the print is quite nice. And we have very decent cooling. So that fan duct that's pointing down seems to be working quite well. So overall, not a bad benchy. So after the benchy, I decided to print a frog here. And I kind of wanted to look at the overhangs. And surprisingly, it did very well with the overhangs. But as you can see here, there's still layering issues. So they're not terrible, but they're definitely there. But other than that, if you look on his back here, it did quite well. And we have a very good retraction, because we barely have any kind of stringing or anything weird like that. So, and our bottoms are also very nice. So you can see, guys, we can do quite good on this huge printing bed with the details. So after the frog, I wanted to print something, you know, a little bit more interesting. So I found this little octopus here off of Thingiverse. And this is quite an intensive print because of all these little legs here. But it printed quite well. And there was support, so that's how that nose printed. And if we look at it up close, we can see that it actually did very well overall. And all of our legs here are, you know, perfectly in motion. And we have no issues whatsoever. There is a little bit of white on these legs, and that's actually the letters from the bed here, or this white paint, should I say. So that was really fun to print, and the kids love these kind of things. And so the last thing I printed was this Moai statue. And by the way, guys, all these were printed in 0.16 layer height, and the speeds were 45 to 50 millimeters a second, so quite a normal printing speed. But this is a quite larger print here, and he's still actually stuck here on the bed, so looks like he's coming out pretty easy. And there he goes. And he also took a chunk of the bed with him. But check out, if you can see that maybe, how good the layering is. It's quite nice on the bottom there, guys. So, and this is not too close to the bed. You know, it's quite perfect basically, because our edge here is excellent. So here we can kind of tell, you know, what this printer is capable of. And you can see the walls are quite nice on there. There's still obviously some layering, and it's harder to see obviously because this is a much larger item. You can kind of hopefully see there the reflections on this back, the back of his head. And quite a nice print. Definitely a very respectable and clean print overall. And here we're looking at his face where there's more details, and all the overhangs, especially under his nose, are pretty much perfect. So that cooling duct is doing a really good job. You know, for the bed size here, you know, this is quite a small print still. Alright, so I'm quite impressed with this printer overall. This is a printer that I can see myself using all the time. If I can just fix the little bit of the layer issue that I have, I feel like this printer is practically perfect. I mean, we have a pretty amazing bed size here of 310 by 310, so, and we can go also quite high at 330. So this is a great printing area. And then the UI is so simple to use and so minimalistic. So overall, guys, initially I really like this printer, and I'm going to give it a thumbs up. Now there's a couple little things I'd like to do, but I'm going to be making an update video for this thing. So I feel like for the bed size that this machine has to offer, it's a very good value. And for people that like to build parts or engineer parts of certain kind, most often need a larger bed. And this printer is a great choice if you're on a budget. But being a budget printer, it's still quite impressive of what it offers. All the fans are quiet. You get magnetic bed. The power supply is quite nice and not loud. You get a touch screen with a clean UI there. And also you have filament detection in case you run out of filament for those long prints. And we have to understand, because this is a budget printer, we can't expect it to do everything perfectly. And let's not forget, a huge plus about this printer is that it was mostly assembled, and all we had to do put a few parts together and plug in the wiring there. Alright guys, well hopefully you enjoyed this video. I know it was quite long. So if you made it to the end and you like this video, then hit that like button. If you enjoy videos like this, I do a lot of printing reviews and updates and little fixes, and I have a lot more to come. So if you're not subscribed, then hit that subscribe button. And if you want to get a printer like this, then I'll leave some links in the description, so check those out. And as always guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.